we can become so connected to our identities. So a good question for anyone listening to ask themselves is, what am I saying I have to be? And do I have to be that?
Hello and welcome to the Wellness Dojo podcast, where we bring real solutions to real health and wellness problems. Today, I'm excited to present to you Trisha Miltimore, an international speaker who works with teams and leaders. And today we talk about the struggle of work-life balance and the powerful impact that personal identity plays in it. I hope you enjoy this episode as much as I did. Let's get into it. All right. Hello, Wellness Ninjas. Excited to be back for another episode here. I'm your host, Kyle Crake, and today I'm excited to have a very special guest on the show. She's an international speaker. She empowers leaders and teams and, humans just in general. She's also a mother of four, so she knows exactly what that struggle for work-life balance is all about. Welcome to the show, Trisha Miltimore.
Thank you. Excited to be here. Thanks for having me.
No, thank you for being here. How are you doing today? Good?
I'm doing good. Just like we were chatting off the air there a little bit. All the kids are at school. This is a good thing. Doesn't always happen. It's a good day. It's a good day.
Yeah, especially right now. It doesn't always happen. Yeah, it's a wild time, and a wild time to be working and finding that balance as well, which is something I really want to talk about today with you. But first, I'd love to hear a little bit more and share with the audience a little bit more about just your journey. I know I was actually looking on your website, and you have quite an incredible journey from being in radio to just, being a parent 4 times over. Can you tell us a little bit about your journey and just how you got to be in this place in life where you're an international speaker who's helping teams and leaders?
I'll give you the Coles notes, but yeah, at 17, all I wanted to do was be a speaker and travel the world. And so I started hosting my own community workshops, and it was on leadership. And I remember at the time my tagline was youth, inspiring youth, because I was a youth back then. That tagline needed to change over time. And so I hosted these community workshops. And then I also got a gig on the radio. And that was pretty exciting. I remember when I first applied to be on radio, because I never went to school for it. I went in there, I was all nervous, went into the broadcasting station, and they pulled me aside, and the gentleman, Jim Reynolds was his name, such a cool person. He said, you know what, listen, go to radio school and then come back. And I was like, oh, radio school. At the time I was in college for event planning. And I was like, okay, well, I don't think that's really what I was thinking of doing, but I waited a couple months, did some more work at the community, more school, whatnot at the college. And then I heard an advertisement for a cruiser girl. Yeah, cruiser. That's what they actually, I think, called it at the time. So I applied for that, and I ended up getting that position. So that was pretty cool. That was my entering of the radio world. And amongst that, I was hosting these community workshops because that's what I wanted to be, and that's what I wanted to do. And when you're 17, you don't really know any different. Life hasn't bashed you down enough to make you think you can't do something. So I was just going after it. And then from the community workshops over the years, my focus then went to parents, because I realized that I can talk to youth as much as I want, but if I didn't have some of the support from the parents, then a lot of the messages were being lost. It's almost like talking to executive leaders or managers, and then that messaging not getting down to where it needs to go. So I actually started hosting parent workshops before I was a parent. How bold. And I was really enjoying those. And then it over the years, and we're talking like over 20 plus years, right? My work then went into corporate. So working with organizations and teams and leaders, all within the world of personal agency and leadership. And over time, as I was having my kids throughout that time, so I have the 4 kids. My oldest is 16, my youngest is 5 and just started school. Exciting. Over all those years, I was doing these programs, creating them, and it was very slow, because I would gain a little momentum, then I get pregnant. And I don't know about you or in your family, but when I get pregnant, that's it. I'm like, now I'm nauseous. I got the hormones. I'm less focused. I know that in 7 months, I'm going to be giving birth to a newborn baby. So it was quite the journey over the last 20 plus years. But, when I look back, man, there's so much wisdom I wish I could tell myself, but ultimately every choice, non-choice, every move forward and move back brought me to where I am today. which is a kind of a cool place. You know, I always thought my 40s were my years, but then we had that fourth. So in terms of work, I can see that, you know, as I get closer to my 50s, I'll probably have a little bit more space. But, you know, I've learned a lot about adapting and engineering an experience that is fulfilling amongst the constraints or the expectations, priorities, the shifting and evolving environment that we live in as parents, and those, you know, as people who want to do good and make impact in the world too, which I know you can really relate to.
Yeah, I mean, that word expectation is one that just really kind of pops up when you're talking there. And
Yeah.
just even just listening to your story, I resonate a lot with like just becoming a parent, and like your priorities change, but also those expectations change so much, and we have all these big ideas about what we want to do with our life. And I mean, I don't think we ever fully have it figured out, right? Like it's just continually changing and adjusting.
Yeah. Well, I'm still trying to figure out what I want to be when I grow up.
Yeah, me too. Yeah,
There's a
that's
story, my dad, when I was a little girl, he'd always come to my room and tell me these magical stories. And I remember one of them was centered around the idea that he thought when he was little that one day he would just grow up, turn a certain age, and he'd be a grown up. And it always stuck with me because you never really feel like a grown up. Like, I'm still surprised I'm actually raising humans. Like, who
yeah,
allowed me to do that?
yeah.
Yeah, I always feel like I'm like this, I'm still the 17-year-old kid trying to, and obviously a little bit of different confidence and you know, perspective and life experience. I love being in my 40s. This is my best time yet.
Hmm.
But I still have that little piece of me. It's like my 7-year-old self, like, okay, gonna keep trying to figure it out.
Yeah. Yeah, I was working with a coach at one time, and he said something along those lines of like, we think that like we're going to change so much as we age, but like our mind doesn't change. Like that voice in our head, it never
Mhm.
really ages. It gets wiser, like you said, and you have perspective that changes and stuff, but
Yeah,
your mind never ages, right? And it's like, yeah, it's very true.
that is so true.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Um I want to start picking your brain a little bit on just like working with teams, and what are some of the biggest things that you find pop up when you're working with leaders, but also with teams, in terms of just like what you're seeing, like maybe the great things that you're seeing that are going on right now, but also maybe some of the struggles that you're seeing people are facing.
Mm. And it's definitely shifted a little bit over the years, but there is some common themes throughout. I have these days called team up days where we get to have conversations with just the team and then just with the leadership, and then we bring them together.
Mm.
Those are really insightful conversations, but what really stands out, I guess, for me is every time we have conversations with just the teams in the room, depending on the culture of the organization and, you know, the psychological safety, which is a very real thing, that kind of will drive the conversation. But if there's any kind of sense of a lack of satisfaction, it always boils down to trust. It always seems to be about communication and trust. So very common themes that I hear from organizations that are having challenges in terms of their culture is that, you know, no one tells us, these are just the common complaints. No one tells us what's going on. We don't know what's happening until it's already happening, or we'll have employee surveys or days like this, and then nothing actually happens from all the information that we provide. There's usually one or two or three really outspoken people and lots who are just sitting back and not saying anything because they don't feel safe to say anything. So there can be these common themes that have varying degrees of intensity, but it's just this commonality of trust and communication. And I find that in companies where there is really open communication from the middle managers up, and I just think the middle management arena is like the most important. We need to spend more time on middle managers.
Mm.
Just because someone's really good at their job and they get promoted doesn't make them a great manager. And that it's skills that need to be taught. And that's where I love to play in that arena, because I feel like we can, you know, we can actually change lives. like change people's lives, not only in middle managers in terms of their leadership development, but in how the people they work with experience life. And this is where work-life balance comes into play, and work-life fulfillment, or what I call it, is work-life synergy. But if we can help people feel safe and heard and valued and understood, it changes the trajectory of their life experience. And I think that's really important, because how we experience work, then we go home, and how do we bring that back to our home and our kids, and just kind of like falls into play. So we have these great conversations with the team members, and then the middle managers and leaders, and it's really interesting to see the different perspectives, even though they all have a common goal of wanting to feel like they have purpose and there's meaning in the work they do, and that they're achieving their goals. There's the slightly different perspectives, but the challenge is to bring those perspectives together in a way that is synergistic, so that they can actually feel like they're all rowing the same direction, which is so cliche, but it's kind of true. There's less resistance, more momentum, less drain, and more drive. Is how I like to put it.
Yeah. Can you kind of define that psychological safety within the workplace? Like, I imagine it ties into the things that you were just saying: culture, communication, trust. I imagine those are big parts of it. But what are you seeing, or how would you define kind of psychological safety within an organization?
There's a lot of different definitions, but I think at the core, it's all about that as a member of an organization, I feel safe to show up, to be me, to feel like I have a voice, right? A voice where I can contribute and share, to collaborate and to connect, where I feel valued, heard, and understood. I think those are some of the three most important. And that other people feel the same way. So psychological safety is just feeling safe, right? Feeling like you're seen, you're valued, and you're heard for who you are, not what you're supposed to be. And that there's this overall sense that you deserve and can contribute, and your voice deserves and can be heard.
Yeah.
It's kind of like a overall package, I think.
Yeah. And we're in such an interesting time that finding this balance of psychological safety, I think, of like what is important for me versus what's important for the company. And I think so many people, even self-employed people, have this internal battle of, I want to give everything to be successful within my career, but then how do I do that in a way that still leaves something on the table for, when I shut the computer off, or when I get home from work and, I got 3 or 4 kids at home, or maybe one kid, or maybe just a spouse or a partner, or maybe a parent to take care of or something. But do you find that that's a struggle that people are facing as well? Of like, I give everything to my career, and when I get home or when I turn off, I just have nothing left.
Yeah, I think it's a common struggle, particularly for entrepreneurs. I think it's a different struggle for entrepreneurs than it is perhaps for someone who's part of an organization, similar but different. So let's break it down. Let's talk about the people in an organization first. So work-life synergy is all about living a joyful, aligned life experience. And, if you're giving it all at work and you have nothing left when you get home, or the energy you bring into the door when you walk into your home is that of drain and frustration, or whatever it could be, then you're giving it all away, right, to one side, and there's no synergy between the two. So to be able to create some meaning and invite some joy and fun amongst all of that. I mean, we need to have more fun in life, is what I think at the core. We just need to not take ourselves so seriously all the time, is to be able to create those boundaries. And I think it's different in an organization, because you are working amongst others, and there is a culture, and there is these expectations. Some are spoken, some are unspoken. And that's why I think it's so important for middle managers and leaders to lead by example, right? To say, listen, I might send you a text at 10 because I'm working late, but that does not mean you need to answer it. Like, you need to specifically tell people that they don't have to do something, or when they should, what I mean? It should go both ways. When you should be doing something, and when you don't need to be doing something. And I love the signatures now on so many people's emails. Like, my time zone may not be your time zone, or my working hours may not be your working hours, but we got to give people permission, because generally speaking, I believe in our own companies with our people is that people generally want to do good, right? They want to they want to contribute. They want to do well. They want to have meaning. They want to be like, yeah, they want that validation. They want that sense of approval. And that's that intrinsic, but also external. Like they want to know they're doing well. So they'll go above and beyond. And if that's not managed, which I don't know if that's the right word, but expectations need to be managed for sure.
Mm-hmm.
So you can give people permission to have that space and that energy, just a quick example, if you have a really big project, the whole team's working on, they're working 12-hour days. Like there's some cases where it's all in, right? But that should be talked about, and how long is that going to last for? And then they need permission at the end, or at what point to be like, listen, go home, relax, spend time with your family, like just, create that space. For entrepreneurs, it's, I think, a slightly different battle, because there's not really anyone saying you should go home and relax.
Yeah.
Or you've done a good job today. You've done enough. You know what? Just go home and put that all aside. And I really see that being a struggle, myself included. I still struggle with it. I feel like I've learned to manage it a little bit better, but because when you're an entrepreneur, especially when you're in the impact world where you feel like the work you're doing has such meaning and can make a difference, it's like, it's just hard to turn it off, right? We're creative. And it's like, so when do we know that we've done enough? Or when do we know that we can relax a little bit? And I think the answer to that is, it's all about your own intrinsic feelings, right? And asking yourself, do I feel like I need to do more because I feel I need to prove something? And what are you trying to prove?
Yeah.
And at what cost is what you're trying to prove affecting your priorities?
Yeah, and I believe people create stories, and this comes from a lack of communication, like what you were talking about, from both sides, I believe. Where I'll give you an example. Like, I get a lot of clients who come to me and they're like, I'm feeling so burnt out because, I've got, maybe all these emails to answer and the emails just don't stop, or I've got these projects, these deadlines that my boss wants me to complete. And I feel like a lot of times there's a miscommunication on expectation, but also on the story that we've just created about what our boss wants of us, or about what we should be doing for ourselves in the entrepreneur world, right?
Yeah.
We create these stories that maybe are true, but most likely aren't true. If I don't answer these emails, my boss is going to think I'm not working hard enough, or they're going to think I'm falling behind, or whatever that case might be. Whereas if it was just communicated properly between the two of them, of either, hey, I know you've got a lot on your shoulders right now. I know you're doing a great job. Keep doing the best that you can, and please, like, take care of yourself in the process. That might really change somebody's story about what they think about their expectation to, work until 9 p.m. at night, kind of thing.
Mm-hmm. That is very true. I think as leaders, we need to make sure that we ask those questions. Like, do you need to be answering these emails? And what's the results going to be? And is it different? How is it different than if you don't? But I love that. The stories we're such good storytellers, right? Man, I create all kinds of stories.
I mean, I think everybody, I think people underestimate the stories that they tell themselves, right? Like, we're very creative in ways that can be very unconducive to ourselves, I think. Yeah,
that's very true. Keeps us safe, keeps us comfortable, right? Confirmation bias all over the place.
Yeah, absolutely. To touch more on the entrepreneur side again for a second, yourself being an entrepreneur, do you have any examples of how you've how you've navigated those waters of, you mentioned like, yeah, I still struggle with this a little bit as well. I agree. I do as well. Like, trying to always find that, quote unquote balance that isn't there. What are some maybe examples of how you've tried to navigate that, or lessons that you've learned through just trying to find work-life synergy, like what you said?
Yeah, it's taken a long time to learn some of these lessons and continue to learn, because life never really shows you the same lessons twice in the same way. But I definitely find now I'm better at creating those boundaries or that space, because it's more of an affirmation of what my priorities are. So I think it's the relationship I have with time that has really shifted in the last 3 or 4 years. And I like to thank COVID for that. COVID really helped me to redefine my relationship with time. So what I mean by that is, for many years, I felt time was running out, even in my early 30s. I don't know why. What the heck? my time is running out. I don't have enough time, busy with the kids all day, trying to do work at night, not enough time. The years are passing by really fast. I didn't really meet my goals this year. I don't have enough time. So the sense of not having enough time, or that it's going by, slipping through my fingers. And over the years, I've been able to change that relationship. And I think particularly because of COVID, where now I just feel much more present with time. So, and I don't know, I wish I could bottle it up of what exactly, helped me get to that place. I've been thinking about it a lot because I get questions like this. But essentially, I think COVID helped me to reflect. It's forced me to stop everything I was doing, because my primary work is as a coach and a speaker, and, live ended and things shifted. Yes. But, just it forced everyone to reflect. Right. So my sense of time right now is very different. And I have goals, and there's so much more that I want to do and things I want to achieve. My 4 kids are healthy. I am able to spend time with them. There's a sense of, or a bit of freedom as an entrepreneur to pick my hours. And I used to think I had to work every single hour to prove that I was working towards my goals. But now I'm like, I chose this lifestyle so that I could go pick up my kid. I could be that person there for the doctor's office. And I used to resent it a little more, that I was always the one having to take that time that was slipping away. But I've shifted that, because it's a blessing in itself. And I just feel like I'm much more present. Not just present, like playing with the kids present, or it's a little bit more than that. I feel that at this point in my life, if this is as good as it gets, then everything else is gravy. So it's probably a deeper connection to gratitude, a deeper connection to acceptance of what is. Doesn't mean I don't have big ideas and goals and I'm not going after them, but I feel a calmer energy. It's much calmer than it used to be. Mm-hmm. I'm not flailing in desperation to make stuff happen. I'm a little bit more relaxed, and I will go after things, and I will be bold, and I will ask for what I want with a little bit more confidence. But it's a calmer energy. And I've been really enjoying that, because, for so many years, I felt like I was just struggling, constantly struggling, when really what I was doing was building. So maybe for anyone who's listening, you're in a state of building, and your story is that it's a struggle. So if you shift that energy, that I'm building one small block after another, it's a little bit of a different mindset, and you can change your experience when you change your mindset.
I love that. Do you think that when you talk about your relationship with time, and how that relationship has really improved to this place of, a little bit more gratitude, and just, it sounds like just a level of calm, of just, okay, we're in this, time is flowing, it's not passing away as much. Would it have been possible, rather, for you to go back into your early 30s, late 20s, and instill that mindset? And if so, how do you think that would have changed anything?
That is such a good question.
Oh, thanks.
You always think about, it's really great what you would say to your younger self, right? I think, I think about this a lot. If I could go back to my younger self, I would hold my hand as I was nursing those babies and feeling like I couldn't get anything done. I remember, it's so funny how it changes, but, and I would just be like, it's okay. You can, like, this goes by so fast that you can slow down and enjoy it. It's a blink. So anyone who's had children knows it's a blink. It feels so long and hard in the moment.
Mm-hmm.
I had a couple of really hard babies, and, but I would just tell myself to calm and enjoy the experience. Now, it's not possible to go back and actually have those conversations. And I think if you tell a young person to enjoy, and just, it's almost something you have to live through, right? Like they always said to me, enjoy your sleep before you have babies. Well, I'm going to enjoy my sleep anyways before I have babies. So like, what the heck? So how it would have changed, perhaps, that's a great question. Like, so if I had taken that advice when I was in my young 30s, and I'd actually calmed and enjoyed, maybe I would have enjoyed the kids a little more, because I feel like this is where we gotta be careful about our stories, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because I can easily create a story that I was like, I wasn't present enough, that I didn't enjoy my kids. I think I did though, right?
Yeah.
I just there was an underlying current of like wanting to achieve and trying to figure that pull and push, right?
Yeah.
So I have to be really careful with my stories, because then I can get into a narrative of sadness that, I didn't do as much as I could with my kids. So it's like the alternate,
Yeah.
when I was young with the kids, I'm not doing enough with my career. And then when I'm past the baby stage and kid stage, I'm like, oh, I didn't enjoy them enough. Well, I don't want to create that narrative too. I think it's more of a drain
Yeah.
than a drive, but I think it's something you have to live through,
Yeah.
and, forward thinking, right? So for anyone who's had a lot of stuff happen in the background, it's like forward thinking. What am I going to do now? What have I learned? What am I going to do now? And for me, it's be calm and sit down with my 5-year-old and listen to his stories from the day with just a little bit more of a calm energy. And I don't know, just laugh and have a little more fun. I think
Yeah.
the fun part is a big part of it. I just need to have more fun,
Yeah.
just enjoy the everyday.
Yeah, in all aspects of life, right? Like I
Yeah.
teach that with fitness and nutrition too, is like have fun with it, enjoy it, and it will be more sustainable long term. Like you'll enjoy the moment more, you'll be more likely to want to do it again the next time, like all those different things. And
Yeah.
I know it's a bit of an unfair question. It's honestly not even a question that I like to answer of like, if I could go back and change things, I don't even like to think about those things. But the reason why I asked that was to lead to this next question, which is, you know, with that in mind, how do you then approach leaders right now who are struggling with that to try and help them make that switch a little bit faster or a little bit more efficient is maybe the better way to say it.
Mm. So when I'm working with leaders, with humans in general, because people come to me from all different walks of life, it's the first thing we really do together. I have a life inventory assessment. It's a really in-depth assessment for their life experience, work, home, family, relationships, all of it. It's to really define their priority, like what really actually matters in their life
Mm-hmm.
right now, and most often people will say what matters most to them is the relationships, because that's what life is. It's relationships. It's our people. And then when we look at how they live their everyday experience, there's a misalignment in terms of their choices and their energy and how they kind of live their everyday. So the first step is to create clear priorities, usually relationships, and then create small little action steps every day and choices that align with those priorities. And it's a subtle shift that happens over time. But that really, it opens up the gates to that joyful experience, because you are going on more dates with your partner. You are sitting down with your kids. You are, going out with your girlfriends or the guy, whatever the case may be. It's usually time with the fellow humans that light your spirit up, but getting really clear on who does that for you and what kind of environments foster that in you. And that's the first step, really get clear on your priorities of what matters.
And do you find that there's a lot of resistance with that, or maybe resistance isn't the right word, but is there a lot of, I guess, friction or struggle with people who are like just trying to get clear on, it sounds like really like what their purpose is, whether it's within an organization or within their just life in general, finding that purpose?
Mm-hmm. I think the friction comes in when, as a defense mechanism about how they've been living their living up to this point, because it's kind of hard to be told or to become aware that I say my family's my priority, but then I'm never there. Or I say my family's a priority, or this relationship's important to me, and then I make choices that do not support that. It's hard to be aware of that. It's not comfortable,
Yeah.
it's like, ugh. But once we become aware, we can create change. And I find people easily kind of fall into the better choices, like not all at once. If you're not trying to like transform your whole life overnight, but just making smaller, it's like a diet, kind of. I hate the word diet, but our healthy eating plan, where you intuitively know you need to make better choices, but then for whatever reasons you don't. So getting clear on what that process is and why that's happening. And then, say every day you make one more better choice. Just one choice. And over time that builds your confidence and that courage muscle. Like, yeah, I can do this. Yeah, I got this, and it creates momentum. But yeah, there's initial resistance or friction simply in the kind of the dissonance between who I am and what I want to be and how the choices I'm actually making.
Yeah. Yeah. in my mind, it just comes back again, like stories, like getting stuck in these stories that we've told ourselves. Because for me, I've noticed in my life, my purpose and my why is constantly changing, right?
Mm-hmm.
And like you mentioned, like the pandemic, right? How many people's whys, how many people's purpose kind of shifted big time through that pandemic,
Yeah.
but you're still stuck in this story that you've been telling yourself of like, no, maybe it's somebody who's like, no, I'm the family person, right? But then they have to go and like maybe start working and try and find a job to help pay for things, or maybe it's the opposite where they're like, yeah, no, I'm a corporate, savage, and but then they end up, now I'm working from home and now I'm also playing mom or dad or whatever the case might be. Do you find people getting stuck in old stories quite often? And is that where some of that resistance seems to come from?
Yeah, absolutely. I would think so. Yeah, our identity, right? How we
Yeah.
identify as ourselves and what we think matters, what we've been saying is important all these years. Sometimes we get into it so deep that we're like, we have to prove ourselves, prove to who, prove to what. I mean, I see this a lot in the industry, in like specific niche industries where someone's climbing the ladder or they have a bit of a following or they think they do or whatever the case may be, and then they want to make a change or they think they want to do something different. They're like, what's everyone going to think? All that social comparison is so powerful. But yeah, I think our identities change big time as we move through life, and we have to allow space for all the stuff that happens to adapt to how we have changed as a person and how we think and how we live and how we feel. Because if we get stuck in our identity, then you could be a very successful whatever and be totally unfulfilled. And that's interestingly where a lot of people previously would come to me in that state, where they're successful on paper, it looks like everything's going really well, but they're not fulfilled. They're like, well, wait a minute, I've worked my whole life for this. What the hell?
Yeah.
Right. And that's a hard place to be. So, then that life inventory assessment and really getting clear on what your priorities are and making those small shifts. But I agree, our identity, we can become so connected to our identities. So a good question for anyone listening to ask themselves is, what am I saying I have to be? And do I have to be that? Right. And just a simple question. I think intuitively we know the answers for that.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a powerful question. Absolutely, it is. Do you have a specific example of a time where you asked yourself that question and had a realization that maybe you weren't aligned?
I would, yeah, for sure. So, again, that whole concept of adaptation, and it's fairly recent. My whole world was always about speaking, and it was always this friction between what I wanted and what I could actually do. And then again, I think I mentioned this earlier, but with the 4 kids, so 16 to 5, I always thought all these years that when the kids got older, I'd be free. Like not free. Obviously I have kids,
Yeah,
but
we're never free.
because yeah, right. But because when they were younger, they're toddlers, and it's so intense and it was so hard. Like I don't even know how did I do it? I don't know. Then I'm like, well, when they're older and they can brush their own teeth and get dressed and go to school, all that fun stuff, I can be more free.
Yeah.
But now I realize, as my kids are teens, that I do not want to miss that moment when my 14-year-old actually wants to talk to me. Like I want to be there for that. We call them Women's Days. If you follow me on LinkedIn, I invite anyone to please connect with me on LinkedIn. There is a newsletter called Work Life Synergy. And I think Tim Hortons must think I'm like their biggest fan, or maybe they probably don't even know who I am. It doesn't matter. But anyways, I talk about Tim Hortons a lot, not only because it is kind of like a focus point for our family where we often go on what we call Women's Days, where we all get in the car and it's just an excuse for me to get my tea because they put some kind of drug in it. I don't know. And a Timbit. I love my sour cream glazed Timbit. But we all get in the car and it's something we all get to do. The kids get a little treat. Wimmy's Day. And it's called Wimmy's Day because it's usually on a Wednesday. So Tim Hortons combined. Anyway, okay.
I love
Enough of that. Anyways, we have so much fun. So there's these moments that bring me so much joy, and they're the simplest things. They're not necessarily the moments on stage. I love being on stage. I love keynoting. I love all that work, but these little micro moments that I don't want to miss. So after COVID and things started coming back, I began to reflect on, okay, well, what is it that actually, what do I want to do? Asking the same questions I ask my clients. And I kind of began to realize that even though this has been my goal for 25 years and I really want to do it, I don't know how much, like, how often can I actually go away? Virtual is great. I can do any virtual presentations, every day, but to travel is really hard. Going away this weekend to a conference, and I have to bring in grandparents, my husband's, because our kids are all in activities. He's going to a tournament in another city with two of the kids. And like, now I got two left over, and it's just so complicated. So I would really resist that in the past. And now I'm at a place where I've had to adapt to my identity and my change, and to have more synergy and feel more alignment, so that I'm like, okay, speaking wise, I'm just going to calm down. What comes and manage it as it comes. But for the most part, I'm happy to take a little bit of step back, and it's a mental step back more than anything, and enjoy the everyday, enjoy these little moments, because they're going to be gone. The kids are going to get getting licenses and be doing their own thing, but this is a short amount of time, just like when they're toddlers. So I've had that kind of reckoning in myself, like, okay, well, what matters right now, and what kind of choices can I make every day that supports what really matters. So I gotta tell you, like, that calm feeling, it took a lot of pressure off my shoulders, because there's only so much you can do, right? There's only, for all the entrepreneurs and the go-getters out there, like, there's only so much you can do. So I've been enjoying this calmer state, and women's days.
I love it. I love it.
Yeah,
And it sounds a lot like it's like embracing this revolution of your identity. Not necessarily that it's like, I have to be this identity, or that you necessarily have to choose, but rather the way it comes to me anyways, as I'm listening to you, is this evolution of identity surrounded by that purpose that we talked about. Where when you know your purpose, the identity that you kind of embody, I guess, towards that purpose really doesn't matter at the end of the day, as long as you're still working towards that purpose that means something to you.
Yeah, right. And there's no one way that it needs to be done, and giving yourself permission for that as well, right?
Yeah.
To be a successful speaker, I don't need to necessarily speak full time. To be, there's other ways that I can, what's the word? Kind of connect with that purpose, which is to make impact and help others to experience work-life synergy. And, it's the commonality throughout all of my many years. But like, I have a podcast. That's another way to connect. I get to do the coaching work. That's another element. So there's like all these different avenues where I can, like you're saying, connect to my purpose, but I can engineer it. I think that's a really important word. I can engineer it for what matters to me and what I need. And that doesn't have to be what I think is the norm in the industry. So for anyone listening who's like working on hybrid this, or adapting what they're doing in their business or in their career and at home, it doesn't have to be one way. There's think outside the box, right? What are the options available to engineer a life experience that invites more work-life synergy, that fun, that fulfillment, that alignment?
What does that mean, to engineer it? Like, how would you describe that?
That is taking personal agency, right? So it's saying, okay, this is my life experience. And I think what happens is so many people fall prey to expectations of their partners, what they think is expectations of their partners or their family members, or what culture, society, everything I think I'm supposed to be, everything I think I'm supposed to do. But engineering is saying what really matters to me, being really honest with yourself, and then creating opportunity, or creating a lifestyle that matches that. So it's not necessarily easy, but it's a different way of thinking. You're not reacting, you're engineering, right? Engineering is that you're building it. So it's a process of thinking outside the box of what is the norm. Looking for people who, often we need to see it to be it. So looking for other people who are forging paths similar to what you're thinking of doing yourself. And often it boils down to asking for what you want. Like, actually ask for it. Oh, you want to work a couple of days from home? Well, maybe you just need to ask for it. Some companies have policies against it. Some are flexible. I think generally as women, we tend to not ask as boldly as we need to, because often we can be like, I don't want to rock the boat. I don't want to upset this person. Engineer your life experience. Ask for what you want. Yeah. Things can happen. That's
such a powerful thing. Just ask for what you want. Like, for me in my life, I've really noticed that. And even just starting a podcast has been something that's really helped me to learn that like when you do ask, sometimes you actually get what you asked for, right? I don't know how many people I've asked to be on the podcast or just asked to make a connection with somebody thinking like they're probably going to say no, but I'm going to ask anyways. And then it's a yes, or then sometimes it's a no. But
Yeah.
when you actually ask for what you want, then it opens the door for at least that communication of, maybe what the story actually is versus what the story you told yourself was when you were like, I'm not going to ask because they're probably going to say no because they probably don't think that, whatever. But
Mhm.
then, maybe somebody says no and it's just because they're just super swamped right now and now's not a good time, right? It changes that story a little bit
Yeah.
too.
Yeah, for sure. And the cool part is now you're doing this podcast and you're putting out all these lessons and wisdom into the world.
Yeah.
And then someone's going to see you doing it and be like, okay, well, Kyle did it, so I can do that too, right? So that's
Yeah,
pretty cool.
exactly. Exactly.
Mhm.
I love this conversation around identity. I think it's super, super powerful. I'm curious, do you think people get lost? I know we kind of touched on this a little bit just now, but in terms of like having to choose an identity and rather just letting it kind of flow into identity, do people get lost a lot especially in the corporate world and in leadership roles of like, you mentioned the word should. People say like,
Mm,
no, this is the type of leader I should be versus this is the type of leader that like actually resonates with my core.
right. The shoulds. Yeah.
Yeah.
And the trends, there's like a lot of
Trends, yeah.
trends in corporate world of it's so easy to get sucked into all these trends about what you should or shouldn't be. And I really encourage all my clients to do as much self-learning as possible so that you don't just live in a vacuum,
Mm-hmm.
like read lots of biographies. I love autobiographies. Man, nothing changes your world more
Same.
than reading about how someone else, how they were changed by something or how they stepped outside their comfort zone. Because it's a real life story, right? But yeah, so do a lot of your own personal learning, and that could be school, but most importantly, just read, listen to podcasts, listen to books. It's because it helps you to expand your sense of identity and how you relate to the world. But I agree, people can become entrenched in their identity. I think we all can because
Mm-hmm.
it's comfortable, right? It's like, this is who I am. I had one client say to me, this is who I am. And I've been like this for 55 years and I'm just not about to change now. I'm like, well, no, I don't know why you hired me then.
Well, yeah,
Yeah.
that's a good point. Like when you do meet that type of resistance, is that a point where you're just like, okay, they're clearly not ready to work with me? Or is that something where you're like, okay, challenge accepted. Let's see how we can, let's see where we can go with this.
Right. That's a good question. It's there's like a balance between that.
Yeah.
I I'm only there to work with people who want to work, who want to
Yeah.
do the work, who want to expand, because then I feel like if they're not, then they're wasting their money, and I don't want to waste their time or their money. I want to see impact. I want to see results.
Yeah.
But with that said, a lot of people, and I am not a life coach, I am a life strategist, work-life synergy. Most of my coaching is around communications and speaking and influencers and whatnot, like that kind of thing at this point. But I do find that at the core, most people were pretty defensive about who we are. And this is natural, right? And so to get past those defenses is part of the process. And some people have bigger defenses up because of lots of things that happen in their lives. So there's lots of the process includes working through those, asking the questions about why you would say something like that, right? And what can you be open to? And what changes do you really seek to make? And then what do you actually need to do to make those changes? To
Yeah.
see it. If you want to feel different, you have to do different. Like I say it to myself 1,000 times. Dave feels like, I want to feel different. I got to do different. So I got to make those sales calls if I want the business, right? I don't
Yeah.
like doing it, but I got to put it out there. Or it's usually the stuff we don't want to do, right? It's really easy to do
Yeah.
the easy stuff. It's easy to do the easy stuff, but
Yeah.
so yeah, with those kind of people, it's like it's a defense mechanism, and we most of us have it to some degree. Sometimes we think we're really open and like, oh, I'm all about self-awareness, but we all have blocks. We all
Yeah.
have kind of self-sabotaging mindsets.
Yeah.
We're human.
Yeah. And that's something that I've really learned working with people as well, is that it's kind of that old phrase that, you can lead a horse to water, but really the way I look at it is like, I'll give you every tool that I have available for you
Mhm.
to succeed and like help you develop those tools and sharpen those tools. But then at the end of the day, like, you have to be willing to put in the work. Like, you have to be willing to ask yourself those questions on a daily basis, to catch your negative thoughts, to, really explore yourself. And if you're not willing to do that, then you're just kind of accepting that identity that you currently have, right?
Yeah. And it's funny because for a lot of people, it's often chaos. Like, I don't feel comfortable where I'm at. I want to make change. But the chaos is the norm, right? The struggle is the norm. I know for myself, for so many years, my story, my identity was about the struggle. I am working so hard. I am going to make this happen. And even when it was happening, I was still like, I'm going to make this happen. So I was like, what the heck, So
Yeah.
it's, yeah, I think we keep changing the levels or our expectations, whatever, but yeah.
Absolutely. And I don't want to talk about myself too much, but to give you like a little bit of background on me as well, like my wife and I had kids very young. And so like we've like what you just mentioned would resonate so much with us as well, where you get stuck in this like survival state and this survival identity of like, oh, we're just trying to survive, and money's always been a struggle and this and that, and it's taken a lot of like work as individuals, but also as a couple to pull ourselves out of that and to go, okay, we don't have to be this survival identity anymore. Like, we can actually start to thrive a little bit, and we can change that. But it, like you said, it comes down to that conversation that you're having with yourself, and also just like a willingness to let go, I think, as well, of some of these stories that we've been holding on to and identifying with, right?
Yeah. Isn't that true? One of my favorite phrases, if I can speak English, is that life doesn't have to be so hard. I usually end every little video I do with that phrase. Life doesn't have to be so hard.
Yeah.
And we often make it harder than it needs to be.
Yeah. One thing my wife and I have started to kind of, one of our mantras now is like, our chaos is beautiful. Like, it's beautiful chaos, right? And like, anytime things start to get stressful or feel like super chaotic, which they often do, we just kind of will stop and remind ourselves, like, we chose this chaos, like this chaotic tornado of a life that we have. Like, every single step along the way, we've made a decision that chose it. And so instead of just like dwelling on it and stressing on it and wondering when we're going to break free of it, it's like just accepting that, like, no, this is actually what we wanted. Like, these are the choices that we've made, that it's what we want. And when we do that, it really changes the perspective on it, I think.
That's a really good one. That's so true, right?
Yeah.
Chaos. The chaos was chosen.
The chaos was chosen. We chose this. Yeah. It's so true though. Like, it really does, like, it really does, at least for me, it pulls me out of it, of like, poor me, or like, why is this still so stressful? And like you said earlier on in the episode, it's always going to be that way. Like, we're always going to have problems, we're always going to have stresses, we're always going to have struggles in finding like that next step. We're always going to want more, right? And it's, I think, from what I'm hearing from you, it's kind of finding the calm in just like the process.
Yeah. Choosing the energy you want to bring to the process.
Yeah. I love it.
That's the engineering part.
Yeah. And I love that. Yeah. I love that, engineering your story, engineering your identity. I think that can be really impactful for people, for sure. I wanted to mention your podcast, Passion for Impact. That's awesome. I hope people go check it out. But another thing that was really cool that I just kind of stumbled across on your website was your shop. There's some really cool things. Can you tell us a little bit about those two things?
It's one of my many ideas. I'm like a squirrel. Yes. So years ago, I had a client, and it was my first foray into the world of social impact, using the business platform for good. And since then, I'm like a junkie. I love it. I want it all the time. I'm always looking into companies that are doing good. So again, using business as a force for good. And so I decided I wanted to create my own little online platform, and it's called the Inspire Store. And it features handmade products, artisan products. I don't have a lot on there right now. I got a few things though, including my book. I have a children's book called I Believe I Can. And then part proceeds from all the sales go to Canada's National Food Bank,
Okay,
because
awesome.
it personally like haunts me that any child in Canada is going hungry. It's just, and so the work that the Canada National, the food banks of Canada is their actual term name. The work they do is to make sure that no kids go hungry and families. And that's just a beautiful thing. So yeah, it's called the inspirestore.org. And thanks for noticing.
Of course, yeah, and we'll have a link to your website in the show notes, so definitely go check it out. There's some like you said, there's not a ton of options on there of different things, but the things that are on there are really, really cool, and I'm certainly interested in getting some of those things. There's the dad bracelet that's on there, looks really cool, and the book looks just amazing. And you wrote that book, hey?
Yeah, I wrote that book. It was actually it's a story about a little girl telling her siblings about her dream to be a rock star. So some context is that I grew up in an entrepreneurial family. We have a music store. So I grew up with rock stars, or people who thought they're rock stars. And I remember being like a little girl and they'd be serenading with their rock star music. And we also manufacture guitars. They're called River Song guitars. And so she's telling her siblings that she's going to be a rock star, but then all the self-doubt comes into play. It's a very cool project because of a couple of reasons. One, it was the pictures, the illustrations were from a young girl. It was her first commission work. And it was also designed and put together by another female entrepreneur who was just starting her agency. So I thought that was really cool. And one little more other note about the story is that the artist, the illustrator, I was pregnant with my fourth at the time, and she drew him with this curly kind of sandy blonde hair, like a lighter brown hair color. And my husband's Italian. Like our kids are pretty much very dark, dark hair and everything. And I was going to get her to change it. Cause I'm like, I'm pretty sure he'll have dark hair. No, he doesn't. He has curly, sandy brown kind of lighter hair.
Amazing.
Isn't that amazing? Yeah.
I love that.
I'm glad she didn't change it. And it's like, it's so cool. It's like she knew.
Yeah. That's awesome. And I love that concept as well of just businesses for good, right? Businesses that are doing good in the world. I think we need that so much in the world, right? And so kudos to you for supporting those businesses. And yeah, like I said, go check out the Inspire Store. Is it Inspire Store, Inspire Shop? Did I get that wrong?
Inspirestore.org.
Store.org.
That's my website.
And the Passion for Impact podcast. Can you tell us just real quickly, just a little bit about your podcast as well?
Sure. Yeah, it's all about sharing stories of people and companies or organizations who are doing good stuff for the world. So some very inspiring stories from people taking things from ideas to actually creating them, from very successful companies to the people just starting out. It's called Passion for Impact.
Awesome. And those are two places people can find you and your things. Where else can people find you on social media, or where can people connect with you?
Yeah, I spend a lot of time on LinkedIn. So Trisha Miltimore on LinkedIn. I also am on Facebook, Trisha Miltimore. I am on Instagram, but I got hacked and I can't get back into that account.
Oh, really?
Oh my gosh. So I started a new account, but it's never been my favorite platform anyways. But anyway, so it's Trisha.Miltimore on Instagram if you want to follow me there as well.
Awesome.
But yeah, I encourage you to, and I would love to know what resonated. I'm a curator of stories. So I like to hear everyone's stories, and then I use that to be able to do the work that I do in the world. So please do connect and reach out.
Awesome. And just to wrap things up here, it's been such a fun conversation. I've really enjoyed it. And I've even, some of the things that you've said, I've kind of been taking like, whoa, I feel like you're speaking right to me sometimes. So it's been really great. And I know our listeners and our viewers are feeling the same way. Maybe just to wrap things up, for people who are struggling with identity and finding even just that work-life synergy in their lives, what would be maybe like one, overlapping message that you would give to these people?
I think I'd go back to something I said earlier, that life doesn't have to be so hard. So ask yourself, in what ways am I making it harder than it needs to be? It's usually rooted in our stories or our habits. So it's another theme from earlier on in the conversation. And finally, you know what? Engineer your life experience and plan for more fun. So actually create fun in your life. It could be the smallest thing once a week, but do something. Just novelty. Have some fun. Spice things up.
Awesome. Well, get out there and do it, people. Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Trisha, for being here. Like I said, this was fun for me. Would love to have you on again sometime in the future. I hope you had fun.
It was fun. Thanks for the conversation.
Awesome. And thank you everybody for watching and listening, and we'll see you in the next episode. For additional support or to work with one of us one-on-one, go to our website, www.wellnessdojo.ca. You can also find us on Instagram at Wellness Dojo YYC or on all other social media platforms searching The Wellness Dojo. We'll see you in the next episode.